You see, my first contact with gold wasn't through markets or spreadsheets or technical charts, but it was through my father. Therefore, I'd like to take you on a journey with me back in time to when I was around 12 years old. And I can remember this moment so vividly as if it was just yesterday. Me standing in my father's study on this warm day of spring. The curtains are drawn and there's this heavy smell of freshly brewed tea and old books in the air. He really loved his tea. But this time he didn't talk about tea. He takes my hand and places something inside of it. It's cold, it's uneven and heavy, at least heavier than it looks. It's a gold coin, and I'm looking at it wondering what I'm supposed to do with it. And he keeps also looking at me, but not with the eyes of a banker. He looks at me with the loving eyes of a father. He says, "Son, this coin is not for spending, but for believing." Back then, I had no idea what to think about this. I had no experience with economics, premium, spot markets, or the complexity of this business. But I know what I felt. Certainty. And this certainty is precisely what makes gold special to this day. Because gold is part of our every own lives. It's part of our families, parts of our relationships. We see it every day. Yet the way we treat gold is kind of strange in my opinion. We worship it, treat it like statues. But statues don't generate yield. And immobility is also the quite opposite of value. Yet this realization didn't just come out of me of nowhere. It came from real-world debate. So today I have to ask a question that's difficult. Difficult for me and probably also difficult for you. Why is gold such a burden? Why is it so difficult to trust, so difficult to value, so difficult to store? And why is it so difficult to integrate into a modern world? Let me tell you about a story from last year. I was attending a workshop at IIM Ahmedabad, and I was sitting in a room full of the sharpest minds of our industry. And of course, we are fighting. Fighting about margins, refining, storage, and all sorts of things. I'm sure good memories rise to all who have been there and can remember now with me. But amidst that noise, I realized something profound. We're all talking about the metal, yet the world doesn't run on metal anymore. It runs on the velocity of capital. If I want to send $10,000 to my sister in another continent, I can just tap a few buttons on my phone and it's done within seconds. If I want to send a fraction of that money's worth in gold from here to Dubai, for example, I trigger a cascade of logistics, insurance, vaulting, and a mountain of paperwork I honestly don't want to imagine. And this friction is exactly why India is sometimes called a sink, a place where gold flows in and never comes out. But if we want to become a leader, we want to become a hub, we have to solve that friction problem. How do we solve this friction problem, you may ask? We solve it by understanding human nature. We've built the IIBS, and it's a masterpiece of infrastructure. It truly is. But if you don't consider human nature, it may never reach its full potential. Last weekend, I flew in from Europe here, and of course I went through security, my luggage was scanned and x-rayed, and I was as calm as I could be. Why shouldn't I be? Well, because I was carrying a significant amount of gold within my pockets. Now, not in the way that you think. There were no heavy bars or coins involved. Just this card. Because this card is linked to real physical gold stored safely within a vault. It gives me access to its value anytime, all around the world. And for all of you guys whose wallets are already overflowing with with cards. There's also a virtual card and a mobile app. But why am I telling you this? Because we humans are convenient beings. We like to take the easy way and follow the path of least resistance. History proves this. For example, when the Gold Control Act was enforced, people didn't stop buying gold. They found other ways, unregulated ways to do so. Or if you're on a diet, for example, and you want to lose some weight, you're eventually going to fail if you keep unhealthy food or snacks at home. So the lesson from this, especially for the regulators, is to make the desired path, the regulated path, the path of least resistance. Make it a straightforward path that everyone wants to follow willingly. But how do we do this? How do we achieve this? How do we bridge the gap between the coin my father gave me, this card, and the future? We need certain architectural solutions to do so. The first one being a regulatory standard for digital gold. I was attending this conference last year, and I had many great talks. But I also realized that each and every one of us had slightly different definitions of digital gold. Moreover than that, each and every one of us had different expectations to the regulatory requirements for digital gold. You can only imagine that misunderstandings and miscommunication were especially easy. Picture this not only in a small room, but over a nation or global market. So this goes out to the regulators again. We need a regulatory standard for digital gold. Find a clear and legal standard for digital gold. Because once the rules are set, the market will follow and grow exponentially. Evening the playing field for businesses was also ensuring consumer trust and peace of mind. Secondly, we need to adopt instant collateralization and availability. Today, if someone needs liquidity, they have to pledge it. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this due to deductions, recertifying, and generally the friction that's involved in this process. Instead, we must build the rails to make pledging and getting gold liquid as frictionless and as easy as possible. If I want to send gold to my sister now, it's a hassle. I can't. But also India is sitting on thousands and thousands of funds held privately. Reducing the friction that's involved in physically handling it will not only benefit the consumers, after all, we're also consumers, but it will also inject a massive amount of low-risk liquidity into the market. And lastly, we need global trust and recirculation. We must stop treating our domestically held gold as frozen. Yes, in some way, it's offline, it's fragmented, it's varying in size, varying in purity, varying in weight. Maybe this goes all the way to the root of that sink problem I told you about earlier. But in order to get out of this, we need to transform from a sink to a global standardized supplier. And at the same time, we need to establish a network of world-class refineries and collection points where citizens can come in with any sort of gold, and through our technology, we can refine it into world-class bullion ready for an international market. Money won't flow into uncertainty, because where uncertainty lives, compliance costs will skyrocket and trade will stall. In order to change, we must develop an outcome rather than a product. Like it was for me at the airport, for example, peace of mind. And I look forward to a day where a father in Delhi can send gold to his daughter in another continent. I look forward to a day where a farmer doesn't have to physically hand over his gold to save his crop. I look forward to the day of me being able to send some gold to my sister in another continent. We have the mass, we have the technology. And I want to end where it began, with my father. Because he gave me that coin not to spend it. He gave me that coin in order to believe. And I do believe that if we all do our jobs right, if we all work together, gold will not only reflect our traditions, but it will also empower our future. And there's a saying that sums this up perfectly that I've also learned last year from a dear friend. I'm sure you all know it. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. And I do think this is extremely true, especially in our business. Thank you very much.
Hello, check. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to felicitate Mr. Moses Bodea. I'd like to request Mr. Kanaya Kakkad of JK Brothers and Mr. Anurag Rastogi to kindly come up on stage and felicitate Mr. Moses Bodea. We have Mr. Anurag Rastogi of Mateshwari Gold and Mr. Kanaya Kakkad of JK Brothers, feliciting Mr. Moses Bodea of GOLDINVEST Edelmetalle GmbH. Thank you, Mr. Moses Bodea. Thank you, Mr. Kanaya Kakkad, and thank you, Mr. Anurag Rastogi.